How do you go about choosing the perfect Disney resort when there are so many to choose from? Well, that answer can come down to a few things. One thing is personal preference. There's multiple resorts on property with multiple different kinds of theming. So if you're after maybe a specific character like The Little Mermaid or Cars or Finding Nemo or Moana, there are resorts that will be more catered to that kind of thing. For example, Finding Nemo is going to be a great option over at Disney's Art of Animation Resort. They've got a whole area themed to Finding Nemo, also Cars, The Lion King, and The Little Mermaid. For Moana, that could be the Polynesian. You're going to get that Polynesian vibe. Also, a lot of the newer rooms do have a Moana theming, with some of the older ones still having Lilo and Stitch. Some other characters that kind of could play into factor are the Incredibles, which is over at Disney's Contemporary Resort, or maybe like a Lion King fan, which isn't exactly at Animal Kingdom Lodge, but there is some influence, obviously, with some Africa theming with the safaris and all that kind of stuff. Also, the rooms do have some subtle hints to the Lion King, depending on which room you're in. There's also a ton of different resort categories, from deluxe to moderate to values, and you might ask yourself, which one is going to be best for me? And for deluxe resort guests, one, I think if you can afford that, they are great for every single person out there. There's really nothing bad about them, except for the pricing can be a little high. Obviously, they're a more expensive and a higher category resort. However, families with young kids, I really like deluxe resorts because they typically, with the exception of a couple, have really close proximity to the theme parks, which means if you need to go back and take a nap or take a break, whatever it is, your resort's right there. You're not really spending an hour, give or take, trying to get back and forth to the parks from your resort, or vice versa. Typically, they also have more than one type of transportation. So for those traveling with the stroller, obviously this depends a little bit on the cast member, also on the time of year and how busy it is. But if you have a single stroller, a lot of times if you're on a Skyliner resort, you don't have to break that stroller down. Where on the bus, you always have to break it down. The monorail, again, kind of hit or miss. If it's crowded, you want to make sure you're breaking that down. The boats, you almost always have to break them down. So something to keep in mind if you've got a stroller. Now, the moderate resorts, those are going to be a little bit typically farther away from the parks. A lot of times your transportation options aren't as much. That being said, over at Disney's Caribbean Beach Resort, they do have access to the Skyliner, and at Disney's Port Orleans, French Quarter, and Riverside, you have water transportation over to Disney Springs, which is nice. Now, keep in mind, you might want to check everything, make sure the Skyliner's not down for refurbishment. And also, when we were there in June of last year at Port Orleans French Quarter, the water level was so low, so the boats to Disney Springs weren't running. So just something to kind of keep in mind as far as transportation options and what's important to you. Finally, on those value resorts, these are resort categories. If you're really on a budget, but this is what you want to stay on property, I would stay at these resorts. Art of Animation and Pop Century are both fantastic. They've got the Skyliner, they've got great theming, they've got plenty of rooms, they've got suites to fit pretty much all family types. Now, then you get into the All-Stars, which aren't my favorite, but if you're doing a really, really park-heavy trip and you're gonna be gone from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, and it's just a bed, All-Stars aren't too hateful. They are the farthest away from the park, and they only have bus transportation. So those are just things you have to plan into effect with your park days. At the end of the day, I would stay at any of these resorts, especially versus staying off of property. To me, even some of the more expensive ones, if it is more expensive to stay on property, you get so many more benefits. You're getting early theme park entry. If you're doing the multi-pass lightning lanes and single pass, you're going to be able to book those at 7 days versus at 3 with everybody else.